Hello, a very good afternoon to all of you. Pleasure to meet you all at this seventh SAARC Talk Series 2023. Welcome all. This is Dr. Beena Gandhi Deori, Deputy Director Research, SAARC Cultural Center, Sri Lanka. SAARC Cultural Center has started with the online SAARC Talk Series 2023 with the aim to bring professionals and experts from various backgrounds to engage in insightful and academic discourse and to share insights on how to promote cultural diversity through different mediums and create an inclusive environment. We are honored to have with us Ms. Renuka Ikanaike, Director, SAARC Cultural Center Sri Lanka, to deliver the welcome address. Over to Madam.
Good afternoon, Ms. Kamalika Bose, distinguished guests. I am delighted to welcome you all to the seventh session of the talk series on cultural heritage and cultural diversity in the SAARC region. As the director of the SAARC Cultural Center, it gives me immense pleasure to see such a diverse and esteemed gathering today. Our main objective for this talk series is to contribute to sustainable development to a deeper understanding of cultural heritage, diversity, and the importance of inclusion in the SAARC region. Cultural heritage and diversity are not just symbols of our rich past, but they are also essential ingredients for building a harmonious and sustainable future. These elements bind us together, promoting mutual understanding and cooperation among the nations of South Asia. Through this talk series, we aim to shed light on the significance of preserving and promoting our cultural heritage and embracing our cultural diversity to foster regional growth and cooperation. Today, we are honored to have with us a distinguished speaker, Ms. Kamalika Bose, an urban conservationist and the founder principal of Heritage Synergies in India. She is a leading expert in the field of heritage conservation and has dedicated her career to preserving the cultural heritage of the region. Ms. Bose will enlighten us with her insights on the topic of building regional cooperation to shared cultural heritage of Kolkata and Dhaka. Her vast experience and expertise in this area will undoubtedly provide valuable insights into how our shared cultural heritage can serve as a foundation for regional cooperation and development. We sincerely thank Ms. Kamalika Bose for sharing her knowledge and time with us today. Her presentation promises to be enlightening and thought provoking, and we are eager to learn from her experiences. The topic we are discussing today holds immense importance. The cultural ties between Calcutta and Dhaka, two historically and culturally rich cities, exemplify the potential for regional cooperation and development through the shared appreciation of our heritage. I also want to express my gratitude to all of you, our esteemed audience, for taking the time to attend this event. Your presence here today signifies your commitment to the cause of cultural heritage and diversity in our region. We encourage you to actively engage in the discussion and share your thoughts and experiences. We hope that today's session will serve as a valuable resource for all of you, providing insights and inspiration that can be applied in your respective fields and communities. Together, we can play a pivotal role in preserving and promoting our cultural heritage and ensuring that it continues to be a source of unity and strength for the SAARC region. Once again, I extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you, and I look forward to an engaging an enlightening session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. And now moving on this afternoon, speaker is Kamalika Bose. Our madam has already spoken a lot about her. She is the founder of the Heritage Synergies India, which is a Mumbai-based consultancy bridging practice, research, and education. Ms. Bose has worked on community-oriented urban conservation and adaptive reuse initiatives in historic cities such as Kolkata, Mumbai, and Azimganj. She has also authored 5 books. Ms. Bose completed her master's in historic preservation planning from Cornell University as a Fulbright scholar and was assistant professor at SEPT University, Ahmedabad from 2008 to 15. She is a recipient of the Society of Architectural Historians and Getty International Fellowship 2016, the European Union's Global Cultural Leadership Programme 2018, and the French Ministry of Culture's International Training Programme Séjour Culture 2018. Ms. Boss is an expert member of the ICOMOS International Scientific Committee on Shared Built Heritage and steering committee member of Scientific Council ICOMOS India. This afternoon, she's going to speak on the topic Building Regional Cooperation through Shared Cultural Heritage of Kolkata and Dhaka. Welcome, Ms. Bose. We are honored to have you here this afternoon. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I really warmth and gratitude from the SAARC Cultural Center in Colombo for thinking of extending this warm invitation to talk about this topic, which to my mind has been a subject of my research, and also something which I think is very important to relook and reimagine these cultural linkages from in the context of the subcontinent and South Asia. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the audience as well. I will share my screen. The topic for my talk today, I'm just going to give a little bit of background to unpack the title itself. I think the title can be understood in two ways, two components rather. One is this aspect of the shared cultural heritage between Kolkata and Dhaka. So I'm going to try and highlight through research work and on ground empirical studies that I have been part of in the last few years, and I'm going to elaborate on that further. Between understanding what are these components and highlighting some of these components that I have understood as important, and some which may have gotten diluted over time for multiple reasons, but there is a very strong connection that I feel exists between Kolkata and Dhaka in the cultural heritage that they share. And in the second part of the title, or the component of the title, which is uh, how do we wish to re-engage, reimagine, or rebuild a sort of regional dialogue, a sort of regional cooperation to amplify, uh, put the spotlight back again, and maybe in a bilateral way do joint initiatives in order to understand and re strengthen this shared cultural heritage in between the two cities and within the broader region as well. So I'm going to, through my experience, the work that I've done, highlight my understanding. I would at the outset say that I am not really a historian, a trained historian on either of the two cities. The understanding that I have built on the history and the urban history rather on these two cities, and is purely through the lens and gaze of an urban conservationist, that I look at these contexts in through the tangible and intangible heritage of cities, urban inner cities, urban cores, historic urban centers. So it is through that lens that I'm going to try to contextualize and speak about the shared cultural components. First of all, I'm going to start my presentation with this understanding that what is it that really links these cities at the core. Fundamentally, if you look at this map from the 1940s, so this is just about a few years before uh, India was partitioned, and this was a map of undivided Bengal that was released. And if you look at this geography, of course, the current boundaries of the borders and political boundaries are not there. It's a map of undivided Bengal, and it emphasizes on the features such as forests, rivers, and the geography essentially of the hills and the rivers and the forests. And within that, the way urban centers or rural of or small, medium, and large urban centers and rural landscapes kind of situated themselves within a deltaic geography, within a very riverine context. So to me, when this geography is really about the land and water, land and vegetation, land and green green fields, that relationship from where towns, cities, settlements, villages, etc., have all been born. So this understanding, this firstly the shared geography, and the shared natural features within which one has one where survival and flourishing as cities and town centers then developed over the centuries becomes very important. And this map is, to my mind, very interesting because it highlights this aspect of what this geographically, this Ganges, Meghna, and Brahmaputra river delta systems, which is the largest such formation in the world, what it really comprises. And that is really this network of rivers, jungles, and forests, which defines and locates this situational and geographical specificity of this region within the larger context of South Asia. And within that, then how do we begin to perceive and locate two immensely important urban centers, which were Dhaka and Calcutta. Of course, these two cities emerged into completely different time spans, and I will come to that later. But this is another early map, much earlier map from the 1680s by John Thornton. And if you look at this, you will also see that the emphasis is on the geography. The rivers really dominate. You can see the way the delta goes and meets into the Bay of Bengal. And the map itself writes that the rich kingdom of Bengal. And this is really important because this was a land of abundance. The soil was so fertile. The system of rivers really allowed for cultivation and flourishing. And from there, there were all sorts of the entire intangible aspect of living patterns, beliefs, food, dress, and of course later trade and the way the cities developed, all kind of therefore have this shared ethos which is coming out of the land and the rivers itself. And understanding this very important link between culture and nature, especially in the context of the Bengal Delta, this was really also what drew all the foreign conquests, all the outside invasions and settlements that happened here, be it from the Muslim period or the British period, that everyone was drawn to Bengal to settle down and set up the Suba and later the presidency, essentially because of this rich, very rich land that it was. And therefore, when we look at a later map now of a more formed geography of a map of the Bengal Suba, and that comprised of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, and a much larger geographical expanse, we still see that these cities, and this is a map from a time where Calcutta had not yet kind of been created. So Calcutta at that time was named as Alinagar, for a very brief period of time by Nawab Sirajuddaulah from the Nawabi period, and Dhaka was known as Jahangir Nagar. So while these cities and these geographies have been named and renamed, shaped and reshaped, also due to uh, the shifting landscape of rivers, so boundaries and landforms have constantly been shaped and reshaped by the changing course of rivers. Within that, we see two very important urban centers arising at two very different periods, because Dhaka emerged as the capital of Mughal Bengal, and at that time Calcutta did not really exist. From there, the capital of the Nawabs shifted to Murshidabad, and eventually Calcutta became the capital of the British Raj, and after that the capital of West Bengal in independent India, and Dhaka in of Bangladesh. So understanding that this sort of larger geographical context then brings us to understanding this next aspect of these etymological linkages of and there is a lot of historical as well as mythical and folk understanding of the names of these two cities. And fundamentally, if we look at the name of Kolikata, the name of Dhaka, and the rivers that have lent to the early development and rise of these two towns, we see again a sort of shared linkage arising. So, coming first to the geography of Dhaka, if we see this map, it's very interesting to see again how within this deltaic landscape you can see how the rivers dominate, and within that you see Jahangir Nagar emerging as what was the capital of Mughal Dhaka. And if you kind of zoom into that map, you see how this shifting riverscape of the Buriganga River. So now the Buriganga is also very important because in its naming, because it is a sort of branching out of the Ganga itself, which comes in from the mainland of India. And when the Ganga enters Bangladesh, the name changes to Padma, and one tributary of the Padma is the Buriganga, on the banks of which Dhaka is situated. And because of this shifting geographical landscape, you also see certain islands and certain smaller land formations within the river, and these are constantly shifting. So if you compare this map to a modern day map of Dhaka, you will see that these islands don't exist anymore, and the shifting course of the river has made it one contiguous land on the other side of Dhaka. And what is really important here is now when we look at uh, this temple, which is actually a 12th century temple and predates the Mughal arrival into Dhaka, is the Dhakeshwari temple, built by the Sena dynasty king Ballal Sen, again on the banks of a canal. And you can see these variations of what we say the Bengal Charchala style, which is the four sloping roofs and set of four individual temples. Dhakeshwari also is a form of Durga, the goddess Durga, and this is again the name is believed to have lent the. It is considered the national temple of Bangladesh today, and the name is believed to have lent the city its name as well. And this whole system of rivers, canals, and rivulets, which then leads to a certain kind of maritime and water based trade and transportation network in the early years. And where we see these photographs of new infrastructure which was then made to connect the various banks of these canals, rivulets, and rivers. And this is an interesting iron suspension bridge which was built in the early 19th century. And I'll ask you to focus on this photograph a little bit, because we will see a similar bridge in the subsequent slides as well. And this sort of a landscape of the bamboo barges, the small dinghies, the bamboo being transported along the water network. So, worship, water, land, geography, these were sort of the early markers of the way the town form was beginning to emerge. And if we sort of compare that with Calcutta, while it emerged much later than the timeline of Dhaka, we see a similar or some sort of resonance or in the geographical logic of where the city and how the city was evolved and was placed geographically. So Calcutta is believed to be a combination of three villages of Shutanuti, Kolikata, and Gobindapur. And these three were sort of clubbed and given to the East India Company to begin their settlement and trading post from here on the banks of the river Hooghly. But as when, so Hooghly is also the river Ganga, as it flows downstream into the delta, it becomes Bhagirathi, and then the Hooghly, as it merges, goes down to the Bay of Bengal. So one tributary of it was the Adi Ganga, which is believed to be a very important, sacred, as well as from inland waterways and transportation point of view. And there you see at the south, on the banks of the Adi Ganga, the Kalighat temple. And this is another very important early site of worship on the banks of the Adi Ganga, which was a canal around the southern fringes of the city. And also, it is believed that Kalighat temple to goddess Kali is again the presiding deity and the name from where Kolikata or Kalikata gets its name of how we understand Kolkata. So, right in the etymology itself of these two cities, there is a sort of understanding and antecedent of the female goddess, and these two forms of Kali and Durga lending their name to the city, which I find is very fascinating because we tend to forget these early and ancient linkages, etymological linkages, when we think of the names of these cities today. And again, we see this kind of river based transportation using local materials, bamboo barges, which are very similar and very common to trade, transportation, and mobility, river based mobility networks in this deltaic geography. And a similar bridge and suspension bridge, almost the same design that we saw in Dhaka over the Dhulai Khal, we see here as well on the Adi Ganga. This was also built around the same time period in the early to mid uh, 19th century, because this photograph itself is from the 1860s. So one can look at this kind of similar rural landscape, which is now kind of slowly urbanizing with trade networks and other factors coming into play. So this is this was something that I wanted to bring to the fore, right, as a to reignite your understanding and imagination about these etymological linkages and how this is also a shared cultural aspect, to now focusing on some aspects, some specific aspects of the riverine linkages of these two cities. And if you see these two uh, paintings or lithographs rather, of the river view of Dhaka. This is a river view painted from the Mughal time, and then you see another one from Kolkata. You really see how the river was the lifeline in a time where road and railway networks were not that well established. The river and the port was the lifeline of these two trading hubs to really have imagined. And when we look at these same landscapes today, of course, there has been a lot of change, a lot of transformation, but we also we see that the river still has a very important and vital role, both in the way people people engage with the river, their daily cultural, religious, and social lives that are conducted on the banks and steps of the ghats, as well as the trade transformation, transportation, and the local economy, which is also helped by the river, and is very important in the existence of cities in this geography even today. And therefore, if I talk about Dhaka, and this is a very interesting map which looks at the pre Mughal and Mughal part, you see that what is hatched in grey was actually the pre Mughal part. And then as the city expanded and extended, you see another quarter being built and developing to its left, and it continues along the banks of the river. So the very important distinct settlements, and the river continued to play a very important role along the way the boats came in, where the taxation points and the toll points were, how you entered the city, how you accessed the various markets, etc. So this is, I'll get into a detailed explanation of a similar map later. But what is important to see is that both pre-Mughal and Mughal development kind of were adjacent to each other, keeping the river and its axis in mind. And therefore, this very interesting and important river view of Dhaka, it is one of the most iconic it's a very, very long painting, and I've kind of taken three extracts from it. You can see the kind of urbanity that was then developing. And if you see the upper part of the scroll, you see the Mughal monuments such as the Bara Katra and the Chota Katra, which were essentially trading and caravanserai kind of hubs and access points of how you entered the Mughal quarters and the markets, etc. The second scroll shows you other kinds of buildings, some of which was a Hindu mutt, a temple, a church, the kind of informal village huts which continue to dawn the riverfront. And the third scroll then shows you further downstream, you see these large mansions, palatial mansions and bungalows of either the Bengalis or the aristocratic Bengali Muslim as well as Armenian merchants who were either traders or zamindars, such as landlords. So we see this kind of a cross section across the river of how what communities o- occupied which part of the riverfront, and how the river was extremely dynamic, the various types of boats of various size, design, and scale which plied these waters and made the riverfront a very active riverfront. And when you kind of cut that to see today, of course, you will see that the city has transformed. The townscape might have completely transformed in what you see as the city from the river, but it is very much a living river, very much the life and vitality of trade, transportation, ferrying people and goods continues to take place of Dhaka even today. And this we see in, and this we understand by, again, the scale of right from ferrying people to goods to raw materials to the long ferry, the long distance transport that connects you to the region, the other regions of Bangladesh, such as Borishal, Chattogram, etc. There is a whole typology of different boats and scales of water transport that plies on the river. And these are the kind of active river scenes that you see on the river. The river is very accessible, the river is very alive with activity, right? And different kinds of activity takes place right from the morning to the night if you go at different times. And there are these different ghats which or jetties which are dedicated to different kinds of activities. So while there is one ghat which is dedicated to the loading and unloading of the fruit market, so the fruits come by water, the cartons come by water and are transported out even modern requirements such as uh, mineral water bottles, etc. The river is a very, very active component of trade as well as ferrying people in today. And as you can see, there is this entire walkway and promenade along the river, which then facilitates this relationship. When we look at this similar situation now in Calcutta itself, it's very interesting because the river here was also utilized for three main reasons, which is similar to the Burigonga. The Hooghly also was a river primarily for trade, then for daily rituals of the citizens, be it the religious rituals, and also for the bazaars. And Bara Bazaar, as you know, is continues to be the largest wholesale market in Asia. And this part, which I've highlighted in this map, is really the historic what was known as the native quarter, or the black town, which is where the Indians live, against the vis-a-vis the part which is hatched in grey, which is the European quarter of British Calcutta. So this is the part which had a much closer connection to the river, both for trade as well as for the daily lives of its residents and all the various bazaars that were there. So if you again look at these early maps, early photographs of Calcutta, you see this very active, bustling river with a port city, so to say, with the railway line coming in, a part of the land being reclaimed to build warehouses, railways, and other transportation networks that facilitates the port city. And along that came up a series of ghats patronized by important landlords and zamindars in the native quarter, which you can see along the riverfront, which some ghats which were dedicated just to women, some were just dedicated for the daily ablutions, etc. But what has happened here is interesting because today, when we look at the Hooghly, it has silted. There are other problems and questions related to its health and environmental sustainability of the river itself, and therefore, in a way, the river today, Hooghly today, is not as active as it used to be at one point in time. And at some level, one may feel that the city has turned its back to its river. In a way, something that we see that Dhaka has not done. The river continues to be a very, very active part in its daily lives today. And therefore, there is a sort of dismay about the tangible heritage which exists along the Hooghly River in the form of these very beautiful individual ghats which had different patrons, right, starting from Bengali merchants to later other Marwari and other non Bengali patrons as well, along the riverfront. And very important, very beautiful ghats are today in this kind of condition, boarded up, not accessible, or have changed their use. And as we go down upstream along the Hooghly, we find a series of such ghats, of such beautiful edifices, which are actually languishing or are in various degrees of requiring help and assistance, because in the city has turned its back on the river, and the river is not that active as we would want it to be. The next component that I'm going to highlight is the presence of this multi-ethnic linkages, and both these cities really demonstrate. And I was very heartened and surprised to find when I visited Dhaka for the first time, the presence of a neighborhood called Armani Tola, which is essentially the neighborhood of the Armenians. And in Calcutta, we have an Armenian church. And if you see the design of the two churches, the steeple, uh, the tower, and the scale, it's very similar. And they are very interesting design parallels in the way both of these churches exist. So if we look at these early statistics statistics and census, we really see that Calcutta was not just about the Europeans and the Indians, just the way Dhaka was not only about the Hindus and the Muslims. There was this intermediary, this intermediate town, which comprised of other foreign migrant ethnicities, who, such as the Armenians, the Jews, the Portuguese, the French. And the early maps of Calcutta demonstrate this. The early census of Calcutta demonstrates this rich tapestry of foreign communities who came and settled here, and therefore created this intermediary grey town between the other two towns. And today, even today, though most of these communities have either left the city or exist in very, very diluted numbers and strength, we continue to see this ethnic diversity and this plurality reinforced through religious monuments, through the nomenclature of streets, and we continue to have this very long stretch which is known as Armenian Street, along where the Armenian church is present even today. And similarly, when we look at these early maps of Dhaka, we see these pockets or enclaves which are dedicated, such as Armanitola, which is where the Armenians were settled, Forashganj to the south, which is believed to have been the quarter where the French were settled. And we also have indications of the English cemetery, a Greek cemetery on the fringes of the city, which all gives a clue to the presence of multi-ethnic foreign communities, naturally due to trade in the capital. For And this is what and there are again census records and a lot of statistics which talk about what each of these communities were engaged in. So this says that the Armenians of Dhaka, there was one priest, there were five landholders, three merchants, one barrister, five shopkeepers, and seven shopmen, and four government servants. So there's a lot of detail in the 19th century when you kind of see what the composition, the demographic composition of these important trading cities. And you continue to find traces of this community and their cultural heritage, which is woven into the tapestry of the city, and it's fairly well maintained. This is the Armenian church in Dhaka today. You can see that due to the sizable population, quite a few of the gravestones are within the church premises, and they go back to as late as 1983. So almost 40 years ago, there has been a presence of Armenians in the city of Dhaka. And similarly, within Calcutta as well, you can see how similar both the churches look in the architectural form, from the interior spaces and the scale, and even from the ways in which they supported philanthropy and this whole idea of interring and having gravestones within the town, within the church itself. I will now move to the next layer in which I see these shared linkages, which to me is really fascinating, which is at the level of of historic neighborhoods and community linkages. And having been born out of primarily for trade and purposes, how markets are at the core of the evolution of this historic fabric. So and this line that you see, the red line, which is cutting across north to south of Calcutta, just keep this in mind. This red line is called Chitpur Road, and I will come back to it when we move forward. So there was a time when Dhaka was known for its 52 markets and 53 alleys. So there is a saying which says Dhaka was the city of Bahanno Bajar ar Teppanno Goli, which essentially means it was a mercantile city. And every lane and every alley could lead you to a different kind of bazaar. And what exemplifies and typifies this are these photographs of the chalk. Now the chalk was today it's completely built up. You have no trace of this large open space anymore. But at one point in time, the chalk was this large open space which would hold markets, daily markets, weekly markets, and this whole culture of markets making the city is kind of seen in this saying itself. And therefore, when we look once more at this pre Mughal and Mughal map of Dhaka, you see all the nomenclatures. If you look at the right quarter, which is the pre Mughal map, you see neighborhoods such as Tati Bazar, which is the bazaar for the cotton weavers and the cotton merchants, Shakhari Bazar, Kumartuli, Bangla Bazar, Lakshmi Bazar. So you see a host of bazaars really making up the town. And on the other side, when with the development in the Mughal era, you also see the Chowk Bazaar, the Maulvi Bazaar, Begum Bazaar, Naya Bazaar. And it was almost like the city was could be broken up into multiple quarters of bazaars. And then, of course, punctured by religious, social, and other institutions that were required for habitat and settlement to come up. But essentially, it was a city of bazaars. And when we look at old Calcutta as well, the native part of Calcutta as well, we see that the story was kind of similar. And we have this interesting anecdote by a traveler who said that the real Chandni Chowk was not in 19th century Delhi, but in Chitpur Road in Calcutta. And though cities like Jaipur, cities like Chandni Chowk and Delhi are kind of known for their bazaars, I think the bazaars of Calcutta are something that is really worth looking at, exploring, and understanding. So that so the way the British sort of positioned Calcutta to the south of the Hooghly River, you kind of see was a very strategic location, so that they could tap into essentially the trade, because all the other European colonies along the Hooghly River, which was almost known as Little Europe on the Ganges. You had the Dutch, the Danish, the French, and the Portuguese much further upstream in Chinsurah, Chandanagar, and Serampur. But the British, by positioning themselves further downstream, was able to then control and cut off trade for the colonies which were upstream. So the entire logic of even developing the city and locating the city was based on a strategic trade point and the development of markets for trade. And with that logic, we see the evolution of the Chitpur Road landscape, which transforms over the founding of Calcutta to over the next 1.5 centuries, from a very rural landscape to a highly urbanized one. And you can see that how that transformation took place visually. And so for me, in the last I have been engaging in several self-initiated as well as collaborative projects in between 2008 and 2018, which was through publications, workshops, books, and art writing, academic research, trying to understand this cultural heritage of the neighborhoods, market and commerce oriented neighborhoods in this native part of Calcutta. And eventually this initiative was really scaled up in the last 3 years through the International Field School model that I was part of as a local expert, which we called an Indo-French workshop with three schools: an architecture school from Paris, Bharati Vidyapeeth in Navi Mumbai, and College of Architecture in Trivandrum. So, as an international field school model with about 60 students in two phases of 2020 and 22, we decided to really understand the cultural heritage of these marketplaces within the native quarter of Kolkata, along the spine of that connects Chitpur Road to the river. And this is how we kind of termed it, an urbanity and a historicity which is generated out of occupations. And we in two kind of phases we really explored the city along the spine of Chitpur Road, and then from Chitpur Road to the river, what connects, and all the intermediary neighborhoods, all the intermediary trades, which are based on hereditary patterns and ancestral trade, um, pre-industrial, post-industrial trades. We see a lot of interesting activity happening, and we were able to identify at least 25 such precincts which exist along the entire length and breadth of Chitpur Road, and what is the cross connection of those to the river as well. And these threw up very interesting insights. Of course, that's a separate lecture. But what this also then allowed us to do was carry forward a similar initiative as a sort of international program with the European Union National Institutes for Culture, which is UNIC Bangladesh, and the European Union, the Alliance Francaise, in Dhaka itself. And the idea was to learn from two great riverine cities of the Bengal Delta. And how does it help us link back to our shared history and our shared cultural ethos? So this is something that we have been. It's an ongoing project that then we started in Dhaka earlier last year, to really understand how do we look at these with new eyes, with fresh understanding, to build cooperation and blurring borders. And culture really becomes that very important tool that allows us to understand the other and what we have as a shared cultural ethos. So, of course, there were multiple partners, and I was a part of that as the local or the regional expert who had worked and understood the geography and the context, and had worked extensively in Kolkata as well. And then we started expanding some of this understanding and to Dhaka itself. And we also identified, which was very interesting for us, what were the traditional occupation or trade based communities in Dhaka. And there's this very interesting book which really lists down all of these caste based and then profession based, occupation based trading communities, such as the Tati, or the weaver, the shakhari, or the conch shell maker, the sabunwala, which is or the soap maker, the lakharhar or the lakriwara or the woodworker, the tambakuwala or the tobacconist, the ahir or the milkman or the herdsman, the kumhar or the potter. And each of these communities, and many, many more, were the dominant communities and trades that took place in these 52 markets and 53 alleys of Dhaka. And if you look at the census between the 19th century census of Dhaka, you will almost see that there is a 50-50 ratio of Hindus to Muslims. And this is really insightful in understanding how both the communities were almost in equal proportion, not only inhabiting the city, but also involved and engaged in its trade, commerce, and economic vitality. And therefore, each of these communities were all involved in some trade. So today, when in the last 2 years we've been working in Dhaka, we see that a lot of these traditional artisanal trades continue to exist in some form, but continue to exist in these geographies, in these native settlements. So I'm just going to quickly give you a ringside view of some of our findings. Of course, it's very detailed, so I'll not get into the details. But for example, the sabunwala. So we found this very large soap making factory ensconced in one of the alleys of the Choto Katra, which was a Mughal time gateway and monument. It was a much larger quadrangle of a caravan sarai. But while this is its condition today, and a lot of construction and other development has happened, the Katra is not very well kept at all. But when you look at the historic fabric and the antiquity of this historic fabric, which you see in the plan, in the dotted red and the black, the part which is hatched in orange is where this soap making factory exists today. And this sort of early ancient trade has therefore been passed on, and it continues to take place today in a different form, but within the same historic precincts which used to take place in ancient times as well. Similarly, if you look at this trade of the lakriwala, which is essentially wood which comes in, woodworkers, carpenters, you see this entire ecosystem that continues to take place with wood coming in from the riverfront by boats and barges, the cutting of them, the sawing of them continuing to happen on the riverfront, from there being transported and transferred to these wood industries or timber merchants, who then also convert some of it into furniture or transport them to other parts of the city. So this is really then interesting, and we mapped this entire ecosystem of where the wood comes from, the forests in the south, and how by water it comes to Dhaka, which are the areas and which are the neighborhoods where this entire ecosystem of the wood warehouses and the wood shops exist even today in Farashganj. The third is very interesting, this Shakha or the Shakharis. And this is the market, which is Shakhari Bajar in Dhaka, which is essentially a neighborhood known for the shell makers, the shell bracelets, and all activities related to worship and in Hindu temples and by the Hindu faith, which is along with other aspects such as music, intangible culture, the production and making of musical instruments. So Shakhari Bajar continues to celebrate, have many temples such as, and celebrate Rath Yatra. There's a very important Jagannath and Krishna mandir within the bazaar itself today, and you continue to see these cultural linkages being actively practiced in these neighborhoods. And while for the rest of the year it's a very narrow but very bustling street in Durga Pujo, this is a very unique Durga Pujo that happens, which is the entire pandal is at the upper level. The goddess is at the upper level so that the road can be used, the road is not blocked, and people can continue to use the road and go across it from below the pandal. So this is a very, very interesting, adaptable way in which the festivals are practiced, but also continues the living heritage of the Shakhari Bajar neighborhood itself. When we extend some of this understanding, we see a similar thing happening in Kolkata as well, where Kumartuli, or the neighborhood of the potters, continues to be the hub of idol making for Durga Puja, and along with other supporting and ancillary trades relating to the making of the goddess's jewelry, the decorative aspects of the backdrop. So right from this community is engaged in the making of the idol, but also stocking dresses, jewelry. You can see that this person is making the goddess's jewelry from existing, from templates, to all kinds of puja material. And the riverfront, where the bamboo, which is used as what we call the kathamo, or the framework, not for the goddess as well as for the pandals, is really it comes by river and it is stored to dry out on Kumartuli Ghat, from where it goes to the neighborhood and is used. So these kind of strands are continued to be seen. The thatch which makes the idol also comes on a bamboo barge on the ghat. So this culture nature water linkages, which of seasonal cyclical linkages of what happens in Kumartuli through the year, how this activity takes place right from the raw material coming in to the idol being immersed back into the water. So it kind of completes that ritual and culture nature cycle of being born from the mud and clay and river and kind of going back into that. This temporality is kind of concluded. And then, of course, the Tambakuwala, which is also the tobacconists, which is very important because we see the tobacco trade now happening in the old Armenian quarters. So the Armenians are not there really anymore as a community, but Armenian street and its surrounding lanes is dominated by this bazaar for wholesale trade by merchants, by tobacco merchants who have actually migrated from Gujarat in the early 20th century. So you see a row of such tobacconists along Calcutta's Armenian street today who occupy these large what would have been large mansions and utilize them as warehouses. So you also see the historical and the historical economy today, and this water-based linkage because these the bidis and the pan and sorry the leaves, the tobacco leaves actually come from the villages, right from Murshidabad, etc. So the river also plays a very important role in facilitating the trade and the retail and wholesale of the raw materials over here. And finally, therefore, as I said, these markets and historic fabric has also given rise to, therefore, to the shared typology and the architectural linkages between trade, commerce, and the architectural manifestation of this. And therefore, we see that in Calcutta, Calcutta is known as the city of palaces. So, what were these palaces? They were really the urban mansions of the landed aristocracy or the zamindars. And if you walk up the length of Chitpur Road today, you will see these kind of large, imposing neoclassical mansions of the erstwhile Bengali zamindars, even today. And this is a typical sort of footprint of these mansions, which are double courtyard mansions, which a Thakur Dalan, which is the primary prayer space where you have the main festivals such as Durga Puja, etc., and a set of ceremonial and private rooms on either side of the public and the private courtyard. So this is a sort of typology, a model that emerged in the context of urban townhouses or urban mansions in the city of Calcutta, with very European furniture, with ostentation and pomp. And when we look at quarters, the quarters in the pre-Mughal quarters of Dhaka, which was earlier known as Sutrapur, and that is where the bulk of the Hindu merchants and zamindars settled, we see a very similar language and articulation of mansions there as well. Of course, their story and their history has been rewritten and taken a different turn post partition, and but they still many of them still exist, but most of them are under threat for demolition or already demolished. So this is the Shutrapur Jomidar Bari. This is another zamindar house. So I'm just going to quickly run through some visuals of very similar in scale, these large courtyard houses which existed within the dense urban fabric of the markets of Dhaka as well, and using a very similar facade making, courtyards, elements, and arcades given to markets and warehouses, and other kinds of neoclassical elements which made the facade of these large mansions, along with the presence, so the continued presence of intangible layers in the sense in the practice of faith, festivals, and folklore. And these are three Hindu temples dedicated to Krishna that we find in this Shambhajar and Farashganj area of Dhaka, which continue to have active worship. The communities settled there, the Hindu Bengali communities settled there, continue to have an active congregation for the cultural continuity of intangible values as well. So, on that note, I will conclude my talk to say that while today uh, Puran Dhaka, which is old Dhaka, and Purana Kolkata have developed the city's history in its economic trajectory, political trajectory, might have taken completely different directions. These cities have now become mega cities, as you can see in their evolution. There continue to be shared historical linkages and several convergences in aspects of trade, aspects of plurality, cosmopolitanism, and demographic diversity, practice of cultural practices, architectural and built form. There are a lot of convergences which I feel are much more than the divergences and the differences that are there. And therefore, in this aspect of how do we work together to bring out these aspects, how do we reimagine and build renewed cultural cooperation between this shared landscape, this shared history, and this shared heritage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bose, uh, for such an enlightening lecture. So, if the audience have any question to ask or any input, any comment, I actually saw Professor Shahnaz Husni Jahan is from University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh. She also joined the talk for I think just 5 minutes back. She left the meeting. So, yeah, Ms. Bose, there is so much that unites the two countries, a shared history and common heritage, as you have pointed out throughout your presentation, linguistic and cultural ties, and then also love for music and arts. So this commonality, as you know, as you have also brought out in the riverine linkages. You talked about trade, how rivers are used for trade, daily rituals, and also the markets and alleys, a shared heritage, you know, which is reflected in this multi dimensional and expanding relations. And I'm glad that we had this lecture. That you know, and through this lecture, you have brought out the shared cultural heritage by exploring the historical, cultural, and architectural sharedness between Kolkata and Dhaka. The river and long linkages, you know, where you have brought out the use of river for trade, daily rituals, markets, and then you also spoke about
Bina,
the
I think you're breaking up you very quickly.
okay, maybe because of the network. Yeah. So so I'll repeat again what I said 2 minutes back. So thank you very much, Ms. Bose, for bringing out for this enlightening talk, and you know, for like bringing out this the shared history and the common heritage, you know, linguistic and cultural ties, this commonality that is reflected in the multidimensional and expanding relations. And I'm glad that you know, you we had this lecture and in which you have brought out the shared cultural heritage by explaining the historical, the cultural, and the architectural the sharedness between Kolkata and Dhaka. This and You have spoke about the riverine linkages, how the rivers are being used for trade, for daily rituals, and also for markets, and also how, you know, you also talked about this multi-ethnic linkages, and talk about the foreign migrants, you know, foreign these Armenians, the ethnic diversity in Kolkata and Dhaka. So yeah, so it's very interesting. And also, you know, the smaller details, the way you talked about the markets, the soap making factories, you know, it's very interesting. So and the lakri haras, something where how the you know, logs are being transported. Then shaka bazaar in Kolkata also, you know, and the this idol market where they make Durga Murti. So it's very interesting actually, you know, to go into these nuances, to smaller details of this shared heritage, the you know, between Kolkata and Dhaka. Thank you very much, Miss Bose, for giving your valuable time and for bringing out such an important, you know, topic for academic discourse. So I also thank the audience for being there. And the detail of the and we have also recorded your video, so it will be there online in the SAARC website. Ms. Bose, thank you once again.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to share this with you. And like I mentioned earlier at the beginning of my lecture as well, the whole idea is to really understand our commonalities more, and
Exactly.
celebrating those commonalities and helping that build this regional
No,
understanding
yes,
rather than
cooperation.
harping on the differences. And I
Yeah,
think as people, as professionals working in the culture sector, it is our professional responsibility not only to work in these places but put forth these commonalities as well.
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
So thank you so
So
much
yeah,
for giving me this platform.
yeah. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Miss Kamalika. Thank you for very interesting lecture and well planned lecture. Thank you so much.